Hey, how's everyone doing? Um, okay, so I just did a live stream that I was gonna post to YouTube, but it didn't it didn't save. So I'm gonna make another video to post on here so that you guys can have something to go back to if you're ever struggling with abuse, which is what I was talking about. So I want to talk about verbal abuse because a lot of people do not realize when they're in an abusive situation because so often the abuser is constantly putting everything on you and blaming you for, whatever is going on. It's your fault, you're the problem, it always becomes, that's my experience with this, is that it's always your fault, and that a lot of people that are in abusive situations or have been for long periods of time, they learn to take everything on their shoulders and kind of like feel like they're a burden, and like they're a problem and they're in the way. That's a really good way to pinpoint if you've been in a toxic abusive relationship, is to see like your emotional patterns. Like if you have a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, if you have this kind of like fear of like everything you do, like nothing will ever be good enough, or it's never right, or that kind of stuff, that a lot of times is from verbal abuse as well. So some things to know about verbal abuse, is that the person who is the abuser, it's always the reason that they say the things that they say to you and they act the way they do is because they have a lot of pain in themselves and their hearts, and a lot of times they weren't shown the love that they deserved when they were growing up, so they don't know how to show up in that space now, and so they lash out and they freak out and they say these awful things, and and it can be really hurtful, but it's hard. I kind of talked about this in the live, like when people say, oh, don't take it personally, that's not coming from a very compassionate place when you've been through verbal abuse, because it's kind of hard when you're being like cussed out or belittled or degraded in some way to just kind of be like, oh, okay, I won't take it personally. You can do that, over time, maybe if you do a lot of work around it, but initially, you're like reacting, and you just kind of dish back what they are like doing to you. And so it's not always, the whole like, oh, don't take it personally, that's the solution. Like, not necessarily, like. But so anyway, so a lot of times people, the abuser, they say all these things, and it's because they're hurting inside, and what their soul is really asking for is love, and they just don't know. They don't know how to express it. They don't know how to go about that. All they know is how they were treated. So that's how they're going to treat you a lot of the times. And it's really sad. It's really sad because if you deal with it from childhood, you grow up, and honestly, it's very easy to not even realize that you're in an abusive situation because you become so used to it. We're conditioned to think that it's normal. And, I know for me that what broke that bubble was when I started going and hanging out at friends' houses and staying the night. I never wanted to be home because of the relationship that I had in my family. And I started noticing that other families don't operate the way that my family was. There wasn't this like constant blaming and attacking and just like cussing out, and it can get physical at times. For me, it was never severely physical other than a few like little things, but either way, like abuse is abuse, period. And even if it's like someone was asking, what if it's just like little comments that people are making over and over, and that's verbal abuse. If someone is trying to like belittle you or degrade you or bring you down, and they're saying mean things, they're like picking at you, picking on you, bullying you, anything, it could be at work, it can be in your family, it could be, a friend, verbal abuse comes in so many forms, and I'm trying to bring awareness to this because a lot of people don't realize when they're in these situations because, like I said, it's so normalized. And, I'll give you an example of a personal story from my childhood. So when I was young, I was going to therapy from like age 5 because there was just always issues in our family from a young age. And I don't remember what age this was, but one of the therapists that I was going to, I'm like a kid. I'm just telling her what happens, how I feel, whatever. I'm a child. And she told my parents, she was like, you guys are, this is an abusive relationship. And my parents never took me back to that therapist. And they told me that I was being manipulative and that I manipulated the therapist into thinking that they were abusive. And so, that's just an example of how twisted this whole thing can get, because the people that are on the abusing end never realize that they're being abusive, or they don't want to look at it. So it's always, the blame is always going on you for everything. And so, I grew up, and I'm still working through these emotional problems and whatnot. And we grow up with this like feeling of being a burden and being a problem, and like, kind of walking on eggshells, like not wanting to upset anyone and always trying to please people and make people happy. And sometimes to the point of not taking care of ourselves by staying in these situations, feeling like we're powerless, that type of stuff. That's really common. And, and also another form of verbal abuse, like if you have a female figure, I'm just saying this from my perspective because of something that I've dealt with recently, and you have someone making comments about your body or, anything like that is verbal abuse. If you have someone kind of picking at your weight, or especially when you're healing, like that's so difficult to deal with. But if you have any of that, or, you try telling someone something that, like a goal or an aspiration that you have, and they kind of just like shoot it down or laugh at it, and like, they maybe say some things negative about that, like, and they keep going, they kind of keep looking for things, like they look for ways to lash out at you or to take out some of their poison and like put it onto you. That's verbal abuse. It's verbal abuse when someone is telling you that you're not going to go anywhere in life, that you're a failure, that you're not going to be successful, that everything you do is just pointless. If you're told that you're not going to make a difference, all that kind of stuff, that's abuse. And there's more subtle, like I said, there's more subtleties to the scale. Like people could say, more passive aggressive things and still be a really abusive dynamic. But then there's like the other end of the scale where it becomes fully blown rage and like cussing out and screaming, and it's always a lot of times the abuser wants control. And so when it gets to that point with whoever it is, for me it was my dad. Just to be honest, and he's not a bad person. I've done a lot of work with him since this, and a lot of forgiveness and healing has been done. He's not a bad person. He was actually a catalyst for me to open my heart even more and to share this message with you guys. So yeah, when he would, get really, a lot of times, sometimes they can have anger issues or other emotional problems because of childhood, but also, we gotta factor in like heavy metals and different toxins and viruses and things like that are also feeding into all of this, like big time. But it would get to the point where, they're angry, the people, they have all this pain in them, so they just want to dump it. Like no matter what it is, there's always a reason that they find. And so it can become like kind of being cussed out and like screamed at, and it can get physical. And, it can just, there's so many different ways that can show up. And it's just really important that we, if we can remove ourselves from the situation. I know it's hard. If you're healing and you can't even get out of bed, then you're going to have to take it step by step, day by day, and just listen to your heart and see what makes sense and what feels right for you. But if you have the ability to get out of the situations, I would highly recommend that. But anyways, what I was going to say was when people get to that point and they're cussing and they're really upset and they're, just kind of spewing out all this toxicity at you, they are basically trying to get a reaction out of you. A lot of times, like, they want you to give it back to them and, like, kind of hold up a mirror of, like, their stuff, and then they think it's you. And then you become the cause, you become the problem, you become, the target, and then they can use that as a way to control you, like, especially if you're a child or something and you kind of dish back what they do, and then all of a sudden, oh, you're grounded and you can't do this, and, like, you're on lockdown or whatever, and then you don't have an out. You can't get away from it. Like, especially as a child, I really want to focus on that because it's hard when you're a child and you literally cannot do anything until you're like 18 years old, just a little ridiculous, I think, but you can't get out of it. And so anyway, so they want this, they use, like, their stuff as a way to kind of control and make them feel, like, secure and strong, because they're really feeling super insecure and super unhappy. So this is their way of, like, kind of coping. But I want to talk about the childhood aspect of this for a second, because it's really important. It's really, really important during all of this. I found, especially in my childhood, to have some sort of out and a safe space that you can go to be heard and to express yourself. Like, for me, it was journaling, and then I had some, like, traumatic stuff happen with that, so I stopped journaling for a while. But no, more so, like, it was, if I didn't have my friends, like, I don't know where I would be right now, because I never wanted to be home because of the situation. It was just so toxic, so much pain all the time. Like, I never wanted to be there. And so my friends, like, their families would always kind of take me in, and, like, that became, like, my family. And it is just so important when you're going through any sort of abusive situation to have an out, to have a safe space that you can go to and be with people who are loving, who can hold you and just be supportive and be understanding, and, kind of help diffuse some of the abusive stuff that's been happening, and, the pain and stuff from that. So I find that is one of the most powerful ways, or not weapons, but, one of the most powerful tools to coping with this if you can't get out of it. And then, sometimes kids don't have an option. They can't even go. Like, a lot of times, like, I wouldn't even be able to leave my own house, and that's when it can become really difficult, because that's when, the suicidal thoughts, and, like, you can get sent into deep depression and things like that. So, I'm trying to shine a light of awareness on this subject, because it's something that's really close to my heart. And like I said, a lot of people don't even realize that they're in these kind of situations. So, how do you heal from how do you heal after being in an abusive relationship? So, like I was saying earlier, I think one really important step is getting out of that situation. If you can, like, if you're sick and stuff, it's going to be different. You're really going to have to gauge it by what feels right, what is the least stressful thing for you. But if you can, when you get out of these situations, you don't even realize how much of a toll they've taken on you until you're out of them. And that is when, like, my healing journey really took a whole different turn when I got out of the abusive dynamic with my family. And I had no idea how much this had affected me, but I felt like I was walking on eggshells, and, like, I was always just worried that, any little thing that I did would set someone off, and, like, I always felt like it was my fault. And so my adrenals were, like, running on overdrive, and I was always stressed out, always my body flooding with adrenaline, just so much. Oh my gosh. And so yeah, my healing was totally kind of put on pause during this, so if you can get out of the situation, I think that is really healing. So you can actually, like, decompress and be with yourself and not be around that kind of abuse nonstop, because it's really damaging on a soul level and physically, emotionally, everything. And then, so we can't always control the situation, like we can't always control the outcome. We can control how we react. We can react from a place of love and compassion, and I'll go more into that in a second. But something that we can always control no matter what, hopefully, if you can make money, a young child, it's different, but you can control the foods that you put into your body. And specifically for this, I think that it's really important to focus on your adrenals, because they're probably going to be really taxed if you're in an abusive situation. So you can eat every 1.5 to 2 hours to protect your adrenals. That's so important. And you can, you want to have a combination of mineral salts and glucose. So like, apple, dates, celery. That's a good adrenal snack. Just making sure that you have something all throughout the day, every few hours, like 1.5 to 2, so that your body doesn't start running on adrenaline and just completely like cripple you, And also glucose is a huge, like, eat a lot of fruit. You obviously want to get it from good sources, fruit, raw honey. That is really, because if you notice also, a lot of times when you're stressed out, you want to go eat something sweet. Like when you're, if you're not eating healthy, you want to go get like a cake or something, because the sugar, it actually acts as a coolant. It calms everything down in the body. So when we get stressed out, our brains actually heat up. And when we have something like an apple, or, maybe apple, some cucumber or something, it actually, the glucose and the cucumber will cool the liver and help flush everything. But particularly the glucose, it goes up to our brain and it acts as a coolant. It literally keeps our brain from like overheating and causing it to like fry and just like, give us insane bouts of anxiety, depression, all sorts of other issues, neurological issues. So we can always make sure that we're eating the right foods, which I would recommend looking into Medical Medium if you haven't, and checking out the adrenal snacks. He actually has a video on YouTube of different snacks you can do. So that's something you can do. And so something I want to touch on also is forgiveness. I talked about this in the live stream as well. This is not something that you can do right away in these situations, because a lot of time there's just so much pain and kind of like built up resentment towards the abuser, because it hurts our hearts to go through this type of trauma. And so it's not going to happen right away, the whole forgiveness thing, but if it feels right in your heart and you can go there, like I have found that it's the most powerful tool to healing from the abuse, not only because you set the other person free, but when you forgive, do it for yourself, because you are taking that weight off of you and you're opening your heart back up, because a lot of times we close up when we're in these situations. And it's really healing. Like, for example, I'll just give you an example of when this really happened for me for the first time to the full extent. So I was at a yoga training, and I was in Costa Rica, and we were doing this sound healing. And you don't have to be meditating or something to do this. This just was how it worked out for me. And I was like resisting it until the very end. Like I couldn't get into it. And then all of a sudden I was like shot into this vision of my dad playing the piano when I was a child. And that was one of the like few good memories that I have of my dad. And I could see all of his pain just like going into the music, and it's like all of a sudden all that dark stuff, all the anger and stuff that I was seeing before just dropped off, and all of a sudden I was seeing who he really was in his true essence. And I cried for like hours and hours, and I always get so emotional talking about this because it's just so powerful. Like it's so powerful when we can learn to see people for who they really are and accept them for where they're at and understand where they're coming from, even in these types of situations. And it sets us free, and it sets them free too. And so that was a really powerful tool, and I just completely forgave him. Like something just shifted in me, and my heart opened back up, and I was like, I'm gonna I'm doing this, you know, I wasn't like, oh, I'm doing this for myself, or like I wasn't thinking about it like that, but I was like, I want him to have the love that he didn't get when he was young. And so then after that, when I would be in the situations where I'm being attacked, I started to just kind of say like, you know, this makes me really sad, it hurts my feelings. You can do that, you can say how you're feeling. But I wasn't reacting. I didn't react anymore, and I just came from a place of compassion. Like sometimes we go through really difficult things, and it's to break our hearts open, to push us into our hearts, and it's truly a blessing. It really is. And so I just started coming from that space and really just showing up in compassion during these situations, and something ended up really shifting in my dad. Some major healing happened, and the relationship actually healed a bit before I left and came out, you know, where I'm at right now, which was in October, something. It wasn't super long ago. But yeah, so you can heal from anything. You can heal from abuse, you can heal from physical, verbal, sexual, emotional. You can heal from all of that. And I just want you to know that it's possible, and that there's steps that we can take no matter where you're at. Like if it's just the food, if it's just having an outlet, having people you can go to, if it's just, you know, journaling and just being able to get it out and express yourself and not hold it all in you. You know, if it's counseling, if it's, you know, there's different tools, the forgiveness, showing up in compassion, not reacting to the situations. But those are some of the main things that I think really helped me with my own experience. And yeah, I just wanted to share with you guys because I think this is such an important topic, and I really want to start doing this more. You know, I'm starting to work with people more with like one-on-one coaching with this to help heal from these kinds of situations. And this is just a message I want to share with the world because, you know, like the dark stuff that we go through, it's incredible what it does to our soul. Like it really strengthens us in a way that we just wouldn't be able to like achieve if we didn't go through the hardships. And so now I'm in a space where I have so much gratitude for all of the stuff that I've been through, because now I can share, now I can give this information out to you guys and hopefully help you through these situations so that they can go smoother with the lessons that I've learned and the way that I've learned to protect myself and heal from this, from the trauma of abuse. And just remember that also that a lot of times with verbal abuse in particular, people don't realize that it's going on. People think that, you know, it's normal, or people think that, oh, you know, I'm just sensitive, or that gets thrown around a lot by the abuser, or that, you know, you're manipulative and, you know, all that good stuff. But just know that a lot of, like, if you're being belittled and degraded in any way and being put down and constantly being kind of like getting jabbed at emotionally, and, you know, it's just told really awful things, or even if it's on a more subtle level, like that is abuse. And please recognize that so you can start your healing, because if you don't recognize that, you just hold all of that weight on you, and you kind of have this weight, like just making you so heavy and just pulling you down. And when you can let go of that and be like, okay, this isn't me, this wasn't me, you know, and now I'm going to do what I can do to take care of myself. I think that is truly when you can start to heal, at least, you know, emotionally. You know, that's a really powerful way that I've found. And also, by the way, when you focus on the food aspect of this, all of this just kind of merges together. So like the food will bring up some emotions if you're eating really clean and doing like the medical medium protocol or anything like that. So it kind of coincides, but I want to focus on both aspects, the food and the emotional part as well, and like how to handle abusive relationships and situations. But yeah, just know that there's tools out there, and I'm here to support you, and I love you, and I see you, and please don't ever feel like you're alone, because I felt like that a lot. And just know that you're not, and that you have a big community, especially with the medical medium community. Like, we have so many people that just so much love and compassion and support no matter what you're going through. So I hope that this helps your journey, and I hope that this will help your healing. And yeah, I hope to do more videos on this later.